60 Minutes with Angela starts right now.
Nigeria, honestly, is a country that can use sports to do so many things. And that's why you are finding Nigerians all over the world winning medals for their adopted countries.
Yes.
Because the talent is there. God has endowed us with that talent. But talent alone does not take you to the podium. Talent is just 20%. All those other factors, funding, the right environment, the science part of sports, the administration, and so on, it carry a bulk of it, 80%.
Well, hello and welcome. This is 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajetomobi. Thank you for joining me on the program today. And so Rio 2016, the Olympics has come and gone. The Federal Republic of Nigeria came away with a measly bronze medal. And that was on the eve of the Games, just at the time when the Games were about to end. And that's just one measly medal to show as our homework after 4 years of supposed preparation. No one should blame the athletes either. Who in his right senses would expect a medal from athletes who were denied funding up to the eve of the start of the Olympic Games? Well, that's where my host today comes in. He's a medical doctor and sports management consultant. Former director of sports with the Lagos State government, he was appointed by the former governor of Lagos State, Babatunde Fashola, in September 2013. He was also the Secretary General for the local organizing committee of the National Sports Festival, which held in Lagos, that's KWEKU 2012. A former special assistant to Nigeria's former Minister of Sport, Ibrahim Issa Bayo, and he was the medical doctor in charge of the FIFA Under-20 football team at the World Cup in 1999. He's currently the chairman, marketing and sponsorship committee of Nigerian State's Directors of Sports Forum. So, join me after the break. I'm counting down 60 minutes with Dr. KWEKU Tandoh. Welcome back. Welcome, Dr. Tandoh. Thank you very much for coming on the program with me.
My pleasure, Angela. Thank you very much.
Right. So I was saying in my intro, I said one measly medal to show as our homework after 4 years of preparation. A lot of people will say, what preparation? Did we actually prepare for these Olympics? So I think that's a good place to start from. We've already seen advertisements for Tokyo 2020, and they started running, focusing on Tokyo, even before the last day of the Rio 2016 Olympics. You know, some people may say it's too early to start, and that tells me that if they're already doing that, it means that the athletes too should also be preparing now, 4 years ahead. Am I right in thinking that?
Oh yes, in fact, the candid truth is that 4 years is actually not enough to prepare to win an Olympic medal. Most countries have an 8-year cycle. They call it an 8-year athlete to podium
program.
The UK, Great Britain, already has visited Tokyo 3 times in the last 2 years. To do what? to choose and select the preparation camp for 2020. The camp for 2020. That's where they'll be having their final preparations for 2020.
And they visited three times.
They're signing the final, taking the final decisions in October this year. So the preparation camp will be ready. Now, when they were interviewing some of the Great Britain administrators, they said, oh no, it's not that we're just beginning to prepare for 2020.
Yes.
We actually now have a developmental plan for 2024. The plan for 2020 started 4 years ago. So it's an 8-year cycle. So for us in Nigeria, yes, 4 years, we have 4 years to prepare, but the problem is not actually the length of time for us. What happens is that we're going to make a lot of noise now. The athletes will come, the noise will die down, and nothing will be done again until a few months to 2020. And then we begin the cycle again. But I really feel that we need to break that pattern.
All right.
And begin to do things right.
Talking about breaking that pattern, I thought a lot about this conversation we're having, casting my mind back to growing up and how sports and music and acting and entertainment were frowned upon by the parents at that time. You know, if you went home at that time when your mates were going to study medicine and law and serious things like architecture, and you said you wanted to be a singer or a dancer, it was major cause for intervention. Do you think that cultural background is still affecting us today? Do you think maybe parents are not getting on board and seeing sports as a veritable alternative to the traditional careers that Nigerian parents seem to like?
Actually, I think that trend has changed. Now you find Nigerian parents actually pushing their children into sports because of the successes that we have recorded. Quickly go and play football, and maybe you're the next Kano JJ or Kocha. But we need to remember something. Even in those days, when it was like, go to school or whatever, it wasn't that we should not do sports. It was that we should not focus on sports to the detriment of our education.
Right.
Because if you look back then, we used to do much better in sports in Nigeria. But you had most of the athletes in schools.
Yes.
Because the foundation of any sports development is school sports.
Inter-house sports.
Yes. Hussey, Shield, Greer, Cobb, and so on and so forth, right from school. And honestly, until we go back to that phase and realize that our hope for sports is in grassroots sports, until we begin to realize that and go back, what did we do then that made us succeed? And it's very simple. There's so many things that we realize that we should have done. For example, you have schools now, you don't have boarding facilities in many schools. You have schools that don't have sporting facilities. You have a lot of community sporting areas that have now been built up into estates and so on and so forth. So you don't see all those things any longer. I remember in those days when we were growing up in Elugbeju, we used to play football with Palm Groove, play with Obani Koro. You remember, you know, in those days. But you don't see those things anymore because those facilities are no longer
the parks have been built up.
Oh yes. When you look at sports development, there are actually like 4 or 5 stages, and you will realize that if any of these stages are either misapplied or forgotten, then it affects the whole chain.
Let's go through the 5 stages.
The first stage is mass participation. That's when you encourage everybody to just do sports.
To participate.
Just participate.
It's not about winning.
It's not about winning.
That's when you say participation is the important
thing. It's important. And
yes.
that's one of the things the International Olympic Committee is also stressing on. They call it sports for all. It's not about winning. Everybody come into sports right from the young age.
Yes.
Now, the second stage is talent identification. The more people come out, the easier it is for you to identify talent.
Right. So if more people come out, then you have
a bigger
pick
pool.
on bigger pool.
You have a bigger pool of people to come out, to choose from when you begin to identify talents. After that, you now have the talent training. That's when you now begin to say, okay, this one is good in table tennis.
Yes.
And then you take to the next level and all that. And then you move on eventually to the elite sport. Now, a lot of times you realize that for the Olympics, Commonwealth Games, is the elite athletes. But the work has to be done from the beginning. If you don't have enough people at mass participation level, you're going to have a fewer number of people coming into elite sports.
Yes.
Also, you look at the role of government in all these phases. Mass participation is government. Government has to provide the facilities for you to have mass participation of sports. Then talent identification is, yes, maybe government and a bit of the sports commissions or the sports councils in the various states. Because then you need coaches that will identify the talents. And then you come to the elite level, which that then becomes the responsibility of the national federations. So there's a defined role for everybody. But right now you'll find out that you can't really say who is doing what now in Nigeria. Well, I was listening to the CEO of UK Sport. They have 20% of lottery funding going into sports development. Now you may think that all that money is going into the elite aspect of sports, but he said no. He said 3% of that 20 goes to elite sport, but 17% goes to grassroots sport development. That is that 17% they used to build the parks, they used to organize local leagues, minor leagues, and so on and so forth. That without the investment in the 17% at grassroots level, you're not going to get anything at the elite level.
There will be no elites emerging.
There will be no elites emerging, because the greater the pool, the better. And we have sort of come to a stage where the Olympics are coming. Okay, go and pump 200 million a month to the games. For what? What can you do at that stage? What happened to the athletes in that 4-year period? For example, if you are using a 4-year cycle, who monitored their training? What were they doing? How were they being trained? Were they getting grants? Honestly, we really need to go back to the basics if we want to get our sports development right.
And I know that you were involved, being employed with the Lagos State government anyway, KWEKU 2012, the National Sports Festival. So are we saying then that, I imagine the natural train will be that from that mass participation at the grassroots level, primary school, secondary school, that is where we will identify the talent that we hope to see at the National Sports Festival. Without that happening, who are the people we are seeing at the National Sports Festival?
That brings us to another problem that we're having now, the regularity of the National Sports Festival.
How often is it supposed to hold?
It's supposed to be every 2 years. But the last one was held in Lagos in 2012. Up till now, another one.
This is 4 years on.
This is 4 years on. And we're not sure it's going to hold this year. Now, people have adduced quite a number of reasons for that, the cost of hosting the festivals, the economic benefits, and so on and so forth. But I believe that even in any situation that we find ourselves, if we have the will and the knowledge to know that, look, this sports is not a corporate social responsibility. Sports, number one, is business. Sports, number two, helps poverty alleviation. Sports gives employment to people. When we begin to see sports like this, it will not be the first thing that will be jettisoned off your expenditure when budget, you begin to have financial constraints and all that. That's what is happening right now. If you don't have a regularity of occurrence in the National Sports Festival, where are you going to get your athletes from? You asked a very valid question. At the last All Africa Games in Congo, which I was a member of the performance monitoring group for Nigeria, Nigeria's participation. We were going around and observing what was going on with our teams in Congo, Brazzaville, and we spoke to quite a number of the athletes. And one of the major things they said was that they have not had national competitions, some of them 3, 4, 5 years,
and they're going for All Africa,
and they're representing Nigeria. So that tells you, how do you choose those who
are the best that you're choosing to go
to when the sport has not had a national competition for the last 4 or 5 years? So your selection becomes, I used to know someone that
used to run in those days.
Let him come. It becomes subjective because there's no measuring index any longer. There was a particular sport. Some of the athletes came with their children to Congo because they were that old, and we didn't have replacements for them. So some of our athletes came with their children to camp.
Pause there, KWEKU, pause. I'm running 400 meters. I've been selected, and I turn up with my 2 sons
to camp. And for one reason or the other,
because I've never handed over to a new generation.
It's really affected quite a number of our sports. It's a problem that honestly has several layers. You're now going to be talking, what is the role of the National Federation? What is the role of the state association? before you even get to the ministry
And
or
I'm
whatever.
going there straight away. I thought that the National Sports Commission is a body that devises or charts a plan for our sport going forward. But it looks as if it's just another parastatal that exists. People go to work there every day, but what they actually do, we don't know, because we're not seeing the benefit of what they do in the quality of the athletes. I mean, I watched the Olympics. We were not there in the hurdles. You know, there were some sports that we featured in. Innocent Bunike. You know, you remember all these names and they're all turning up there. We always made the finals of a lot of track events.
Especially the sprints.
Especially the sprints. And suddenly we're not there anymore. We don't exist in these sports.
Yeah, I would like to just dwell a little on the structure of sports in Nigeria. We have the sports associations at the state levels.
Yes.
Every state has its various sports association, football, cricket, swimming, and so on and so forth. And then maybe you have either a sports council or a sports commission at that state level.
Yes.
And then you move up, you have at the national level, we used to have the National Sports Commission. But last year, the National Sports Commission was scrapped and we went back to a ministry structure where we have a Ministry of Youth and Sports right now. Honestly, in my own opinion, I think that will not take our sports forward. You have a federal Ministry of Sports, Youth and Sports, made up of people posted from different departments, like they do in the civil service. Once you're in the civil service, you can be posted
to anywhere.
And you have them posted anywhere to come to sports. Yes, administratively and so on, that can all go well.
Yes.
But sports is a sector that has a little bit of professionalism involved, a little bit of technicalities involved.
Yes.
You have a system that restricts the technicalities and just promotes
the administrative
setup. It's not going to work. In 1996, UK got one gold medal in Atlanta 1996. We got two, we were ahead of them.
Yes.
And then they realized that there was a problem. So in 1997, they scrapped the UK Sports Council, or the UK Sports Council, so to speak, which was like their Ministry of Sports.
Yes.
And decided that they needed to go into a little bit more professionalism in the administration of sports. And so UK Sports was set up more like a private sector organization to be in charge of funding and, you know.
Was that the one SEBCO was appointed to?
No, I think it was there at one time before he moved to the IAAF and then and all that. And then they now had the British Olympic Association, which is like our own National Olympic Committee.
Yes.
Those two bodies are supposed to be in charge of sports in Nigeria. But for one reason or the other, the National Olympic Committee has not lived up to expectation from a period when it went down. Because I remember when the National Olympic Committee was really functional, when you had people like Major General Jugaba, you had Adefokwe, you had there's this other Alhaji Adejumo and co as president of the Olympic Committee. These were self-made men and women in the Olympic Committee. You had the Mrs. Alex Nwokedi, she was also there, you know, and they used their money for the Olympic Committee. They were not dependent on government. One way, somehow, I think around, it must have been, I think it was in the late 90s, there was a problem. And the ministry, we had a ministry set up then, decided that, they were now going to put in their own people to head the NOC. So the NOC more or less became an appendage of the ministry. Two agencies that are supposed to be doing two different things. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, the NOC is not living up to its expectation. Now, talking about the Federal Ministry of Sports, I think we need to go back to the National Sports Commission structure.
Yes.
We really need to go back to it if we want to move our sports
We'll take our first break now. When we come back, I want to start off from that point where you talk about the Ministry of Sports. Is that a criticism, for instance, of the current sports minister? So join us again after the break. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, it's 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajetomobi. On my hot seat today, Dr. KWEKU Tandoh, sports management consultant. So before we went on the break, you talked about jettisoning the Ministry of Sports and going back to the National Sports Commission. Is that an indictment of the current Minister of Sports, or you are looking at it generally, that ministry system can't take us anywhere?
Yeah, it's not about the personality. And then another thing we need to remember is that the minister came in, I think, October or November 2015.
Yes.
So there is no way you can hold him responsible for the performance at the Olympics.
Because you're supposed to have been prepared.
Long before then.
Right.
You know, there may have been one or two other areas that you can hold him on, but in terms of the performance, I would not hold him responsible. But that notwithstanding, the structure I'm talking about is more of a holistic structure, because under the National Sports Commission structure, you tend to have a bit more expertise. You tend to have a little bit more professionalism in terms of having sports experts in various departments.
Okay.
Running.
Are we talking
sports.
about bringing in people into that administration who have actually done sports before?
Oh yes, yeah. You could, for example, you had a structure where you have maybe like a department of grassroots sports.
Yes.
You have a department of sports medicine. You have a department, a technical department where the coaches are and all that. In those departments, you need somebody that has
done the sport before.
Either done the sport before or has gained expert knowledge in the sport. But a situation where you have someone posted from Ministry of Agriculture
to come
there, there's a little bit of disconnect.
And that disconnect translates to many things. One of the examples I've been giving in researching for this is putting core administrators into sports means that sometimes they don't understand the intricacies. For instance, you're traveling to games in a faraway country, an administrator won't pay attention to the time of your flight, what time you arrive there, how soon you will recover from that traveling journey, and how soon you'll be able to get back
to top fitness for you to be able to compete.
To compete. You know, so they said to me, that is why we say that you need to bring in people who have done the sport before, as you say, gained a lot of experience by working in and around the sport.
Exactly. I mean, you've raised a very valid point there, and that is something that is vital. Another thing we need to understand, because of the dynamics of sports, the usual annual budgeting system cannot work for sports.
Right.
For example, and I'll give you an example. You have 4 years between now and the next Olympics. But you need to begin to prepare your athletes for the next Olympics in 4 years' time now. So you are waiting for the annual budget. For example, you have a budget, between now and Rio, I need 200 million. It's not about you now saying, maybe this year I'll get 10. Or no, because the training has started. The grants have to continue. The athletes, the nutrition, the trainers, the coaches have to be deployed. It's a 4-year budgeting cycle. We can't maintain sports.
We can't break it.
Oh no, you can't break it.
Okay. Now you talked about funding and the athletes. Take me through what it entails to raise an Olympic athlete. You've talked now about nutrition. You've talked about grants. What are grants? You know, we read these things in the papers, but many people don't understand how the system really works. Who pays for their coaching? Who treats their injuries along the way? Who feeds them? Who helps them out? Because sometimes some of these athletes are also the breadwinners of their families. How does it work? You know, what does it take to raise an Olympic athlete?
It takes a lot of money. I think it was after 2012, the Honorable Minister of Sports then, we had the National Sports Commission structure in place.
Yes.
He was the chairman of the National Sports Commission. That's Bolaji Abdullahi. He set up a system for grants for athletes based on a classification for the athletes. First of all, a classification for the sport.
Right.
And then within the sport, a classification for the athletes in terms of their capacity and their performance, whereby every year they'll be entitled to so amount of money for their training. Now, you asked a good question. Who pays for their coaches and all that? It's supposed to be from those grants. And that is also one major reason why you find a Nigerian athlete. I'll give you a very good example. Blessing Okagbari, running all over the place, winning, doing everything and getting excellent prizes, and then comes to the international event,
the Olympics,
and doesn't do as well. It's not their fault. They have to go and participate in these events to earn money. Those, for example, in athletics, the Diamond Leagues and so on and so on, the IAF Diamond Leagues and all that. They go and participate to get money to be able to pay their coaches, because we don't give them grants.
Where Usain Bolt is preserving himself for the Olympics.
The year of major events, you don't find those top athletes competing all over the world, because they know that for that year, their country will be taking care of all their needs.
In the Olympic
year, you don't see them taking part in. Usain Bolt, I think, ran maybe his first race, 200 meters race, was 2 weeks in June in London. That was his first race this year in 200 meters. Because he didn't need to be taking part in all the other ones
to earn
any money. Number one, he has a sponsor. Number two, he has a country that is preparing him for the Olympic Games. So they tend to peak at those international events. Meanwhile, ours will have drained themselves out because they have to earn a living, because we don't have a proper grant system in place to sustain them.
So when Nigerians are criticizing Blessing Okagbari for not getting into the finals, we're not taking into consideration all the meets
that she has had to attend this year. Every race drains an athlete. You need a recovery time.
Yes.
In terms of either your physical body, even mentally, you need a good recovery time. Our athletes don't have good recovery time because they have to survive out there by taking part in every day. Go to Russia today, next week they're in Milan, and they're going to Poland, going to Prague and all that, because they need to earn money from these meets to pay their coaches and to continue their training. By the time they get to international events, they're drained.
Did you hear about that Cherika girl who participated in sculls?
Yeah.
The rowing, and how long it took her to get the attention of the Nigerian authorities that she wanted to participate, and how she raised funds on GoFundMe.
That also brings us to another point, that we tend to concentrate too much on particular sports to the detriment of others.
I foresee after the skulls thing that a lot of Nigerians are going to now look for sports that are not too popular and start to participate in them. Maybe we will get medals in those unusual sports.
I mean, just like you're saying, Great Britain already had a statistical analysis. They said, okay, we've won 67 medals, the highest number of medals ever for Great Britain, whether at home or away from home. But then they did an analysis and found out that, okay, yes, our spread is over more sports than before. But then they now said, weightlifting has 45 medals, we didn't win any. There was another one, wrestling.
Yes.
That they had also 43 medals, I think they won 2 bronze. And then, so they already identified some high medal sports.
Yes.
And they're saying that because of that, they're funding now, they're going to put a bit more money on those sports that have more medals that they did not take into cognizance for 2016, so that they may be able to get a few more, because right now they're already looking at where will we get more medals at the next event. It's not going to be from cycling and gymnastics that they've won almost everything already anyway, or from archery or shooting.
Yes.
So they've started looking, where are those other sports that have high number of medals? Let's begin to pump money in there. Those are the kind of things
whereas
that we're talking
we
about.
are still concentrating on the traditional sprint, and
we're even concentrating on the team sports that will win you only 1 gold medal. Really? For all you spend on football, it's just 1 gold medal. If you put the amount of money you spend on football, on table tennis, or on swimming or something, you probably end up with more medals. So we need to really look at, it's not just about, I'm going to take part in in 2020 Tokyo Olympics.
Yes.
What is your basis? What do you want to achieve? What are your goals?
What
sports are you looking at?
Yes.
Why are you looking at those sports? Do you have comparative advantage in those sports? Are you going to be able to, in a 4-year period, develop an athlete to podium in a 4-year period? If not, you may need to look at other sports and you may be able to do that.
Yes.
Because even with all your funding, you still need that cycle, that time.
And talking about comparative advantage, you know, when you read in social media, people make fun of Nigerians from certain areas of the country. For instance, we expect to see Nigerians who live in the coastal areas where there is water, in swimming, in diving, you know, and things like that. We expect to see people from the north doing archery and stuff like that.
And horse riding.
Horse riding, you know, if these are things you do normally in your environment, why are we not translating these things and training them up?
Because we have not actually imbibed the culture of using sports to promote your country. These people that are doing this and all that, you can imagine Great Britain were arriving in the UK and it's like a holiday because everybody is excited. They're proud of their athletes. They're proud of what they have done. What did they do? They took part in sports and won a number of medals. Not that the economy improved.
Yes.
Not that some other major milestone happened.
Yes.
But that alone, that feel-good factor, can translate into a lot of things for them in Great Britain. They have also identified that the feel-good factor of 2012 contributed of their success in 2012 has contributed to their success in 2016, and they want to build up on that. I understand that when they were in the air, the pilot of the plane that was bringing them was giving information to the land. So we're almost there, we're bringing the medalists home, you know, and generating a lot of euphoria back home for those that were waiting for them to come. It depends on the way you want to use it, and we're not yet using sports right in Nigeria.
Funny you should talk about Britain, because I researched on Olympic rewards by country. Great Britain doesn't give a dime to its athletes compared to some other countries. I'll just read some to you. If you get a gold medal in these countries, these are the amounts of monies you will get. In Taiwan, a gold medal will earn you $950,000. That's just about 50,000 under $1 million. In Singapore, a gold medal will give you $746,000. Indonesia, $383,000. Thailand, $290,000. Malaysia, $251,000. Brazil and Kazakhstan will give you $250,000 for a gold medal. Azerbaijan, $247,000. The Philippines, $216,000. Kyrgyzstan, $200,000. Now, the lesser amounts: China, $36,000. The United States, $25,000. Trinidad and Tobago, $150,000. And in Trinidad, you will also get a luxury flat and 20,000 square feet of land. In Italy, $185,000. France, $66,000. Russia, $61,000. South Africa, $36,000. Germany, $20,000. And Australia, $15,000. How much does Nigeria give its athletes for any medal?
Well, I'm not aware that we have any standard rate in Nigeria. I think, if I recall, it's up to the government of the day to decide how they want to reward their medalists. But the truth of the matter is, how many gold medals have we actually gotten in the Olympics?
Can it be a motivating factor, though?
It could be, but I would rather we spend more money on ensuring that they get medals first of all, and then we can begin to reward them. I mean, a situation where an athlete medals only because of the effort of that athlete, even to get something from the state or from the government, the athlete will not feel right, because already he or she is disillusioned that when I was preparing for this thing, I wish you had given me all this while I was preparing, because that's when they need it most. I don't think we have any standard package for medalists in Nigeria right now, you know, but it's a good reward, it's a good incentive, but reward comes after you have already invested in the development. So let's not put the cart before the horse.
Join us again after the break. Welcome back. My concluding moments now with Dr. KWEKU TANDOH, sports management consultant. You know, when you watch the Olympics and you see other countries, the contingents, you see former athletes who are now involved in the coaching of the current athletes in the country. And that brings me to this point. Do we have the right personnel coaching and preparing our athletes for life at the top of their game?
Again, I would say we don't have a structure in place for that. And you've raised 2 points. One, the coaches. Number 2 is what I would call the psychology of our athletes. And I want to just give an example on both.
Yes.
The lady that won the gold medal in table tennis for China, the number 1 in the world, immediately after, because she's won it before, and I think she's been there for quite a while. Immediately after that event, when they were interviewing her, she said, that she's retiring and already she's engaged as a coach for China. That's because she needs to hand over to the next generation of people coming. So she already has a job. She's going waiting. She's just won a gold medal. She's retired from international competition, and her next assignment is to begin to be a national coach for China. That's on the coaching aspect. On the issue of psychology, something occurred to me when Aaron Okwodri was about to play his quarterfinal match against the world number 1, Malone.
After Segun Toriola had been removed
and all that. Aaron had beaten the number 13 seed, the number 13 in the world in the last 32, and then had beaten the number 7 Timo Boll of Germany. Before the game with the number 1, you could see that Aaron had
afraid.
Lost. He was not psychologically prepared for that game.
Why do you think so? He was intimidated?
He's playing the number 1 in the world. He knows that and all that. But for me, that is where you need a sports psychologist. The night before that game was not the day when he's going to try and learn any new tricks or do any training. He just needed to be lifted up psychologically. Did we have any psychologist attached to the team in Rio? I'm not sure we did.
You've traveled with the football team as a doctor. Do you go with a psychologist?
For the football team then, because I was in the 80s and all that, yes, we had a psychologist then. But, I could see it in him when he came in for that game that already he had lost. You can compare that game with, he met the same Malone when they were playing the team events just a few days after.
Yes.
And his performance then was better than the previous one because he had seen that, I can play this guy and I can be relaxed. So if he had a psychologist, I'm not saying he would have won that game, but at least his demeanor and all that. Aaron was already saying, I'm playing the number 1. When they were being introduced, he was more or less bowing to the guy already before the game. Out of that respect and awe, you understand? So we need to know that it's not just about gathering athletes and saying we're going to go to the games. Where are the psychologists? Where are the scientists? Great Britain made a prediction that they were going to win 48 medals. They ended up winning 67. What was the prediction based on? It wasn't based on the fact that, I think we can do it. No. It was a scientific prediction.
Based on what they had invested.
Based on investment, based on the performance ratio of the athletes over a period of time. So they had measured it that, this guy has improved by 0.1% or 0.1 seconds. Between now and the games, he will take off another 2 seconds. If he does that, his time will be within this period. So that can win him a medal. It was a scientific prediction. It was not that we win something. Based on what? And that's why they could exceed it, because it was scientific. And so if all those other factors were falling into place, then the more medals. Don't forget that in sports anything can happen. You may predict that this one is only going to be 4th because of we've seen his performance. Something can happen to the 1st and 2nd supposedly. And then the guy gets promoted. For example, they may drop their baton in a relay or something, and you take the next position. But the prediction is based on scientific information and scientific data, not over a 1-month period, over a 4-year or an 8-year period, based on measurements of performance, investments, and other factors that are put in.
Were you shocked, like I was, to see a lot of Nigerians running for so many countries you know, the girl in the 4 by 100, Moralake, you know, so many other names. In England, you saw Uhorogu and Onwara, two Nigerian girls in the 4 by 400, you know, and that tells me that not that we're lazy, not that we can't do sports, but these countries they're running for have probably put in something a bit more than we have done.
Yeah, that's just it. We have the raw talent. Don't forget I said that there are stages of sports development.
Yes.
When you do the awareness, you do the talent identification, you do a little bit of training, you've exposed the athlete. Now, to move from that level to elite level is where we always fail, because we don't put in the investment, we don't put in the structure and the systems that are in place to move you to elite level. That's what those other countries are offering them. The girl that ran for Bahrain, I think Kemi Adekoya also, 400 meters. She was Nigerian champion up to 2014.
I mean, do you have any idea about what pushes a Nigerian athlete to decide, I'm going to run for Qatar, for instance?
Because what pushes they want to excel. Now, you've decided that your career is athletics and you are a 400-meter runner. You want to be the best. And then you now fall into a system that does not allow you to be the best. I can tell you that you will do whatever you have to do to be the best, because it's not about being a Nigerian. When you become the best, for you, it's a personal achievement. It's secondary that is for Nigeria or it's for UK or whatever. You need to satisfy your personal achievement in life, and that's what many of this. So, you know, I had a discussion with some people the other day, and they were saying, "Oh, why are they're not patriotic?" I said, if they were patriotic and remained in Nigeria, they will not be on the podium.
You won't see them.
You won't see them. And so in terms of personal fulfillment, they failed. But now they're on the podium, they're recognized. They've had personal achievement. Some of them will transfer their knowledge back to Nigeria. And I'll give you a very good example. Daniel Igali.
The wrestler.
The wrestler. He was African champion, represented Nigeria, I think even up till 1996. In 2000, he represented Canada. Because of this same kind of problem, he felt that he could not achieve much, you know, under that setup. He went to Canada, got their training, did everything, and became an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling in 2000 in Sydney. He got all the experience and all that. He's come back to Nigeria. He's now the president of the Nigerian Wrestling Federation. Because of the connections he had, wrestling has moved.
That's why we saw a few wrestlers.
That's why you saw 7 wrestlers qualifying to represent. Don't forget that they did not qualify as Nigeria. They qualified for Africa, because the elimination is for Africa. You represent Africa. 7 of them came in to represent. That's something good. And you know, Daniel has been able to use the contacts he's made there to expose them for training, set up even at his own personal expense. So sometimes it helps to do this, but I don't blame them. I don't say, oh, I want to be patriotic. If they remained under the system that we operate in Nigeria, they will not become who they have become as either bronze medalists or gold medalists and all that, and nobody will hear about them. And then we will now be saying, oh, why didn't you take the opportunity when you had the opportunity to better yourself? It's not their fault, and it's just an indictment of the system that we operate for sports. We really need, if we're really serious, we need to sit down, think, and decide, what do we want to use sports for in Nigeria? And after we take a decision, we begin to we draw a plan that will fulfill the vision of that decision. Until we do that, I think we're just going to be going around in circles and doing the same kind of thing over and over again, complaining after one event and all that. We know what to do, but why are we not doing it? And why don't we have in authority people who want to do the right thing for sports? Why don't we have them in authority in sports? I think that's something our leaders need to look at critically in deciding what structure we want to have for sports in Nigeria, who are the people that are going to work in those structures, why that particular structure, and if we follow this structure, what will it achieve? And if we're going to do it, who are the right people that will run with this structure and take us to where we're supposed to be? Nigeria, honestly, is a country that can use sports to do so many things. And that's why you are finding Nigerians all over the world winning medals for their adopted countries.
Yes.
Because the talent is there. God has endowed us with that talent. But talent alone does not take you to the podium. Talent is just 20%. All those other factors, funding, the right environment, the science part of sports, the administration, and so on, they carry a bulk of it, 80%.
I also know that other countries reward their coaches for gold medals. Between South Korea, India, and Azerbaijan, coaches will get anything from $17,000 to $123,000. And I thought, what an incentive for a coach to make sure that his athlete is on top of his game and gets a gold medal. Do we have any program here that takes care of the coaches who are coaching our athletes?
Yes, we have some coaches. Maybe not in all sports, but honestly, for me, I think that's one area we're lacking because we have not invested in our coaches in terms of training, retraining, refresher courses, and actually having a system that breeds coaches. You know, we have the National Institute of Sports, which for me is a failure.
Does it still exist on paper?
I think it exists on paper, just like you have rightly said. You know, it's obviously not doing what it was cut out to do. I'm aware that a few years ago, the National Sports Commission was trying to set up a coaching classification scheme whereby we could classify the state of our coaches and use that as a platform to determine those who are trainable and those who, and if they are trainable, what kind of training do they need, and support them in getting that training. But now that we don't have a sports commission again, I'm not sure whether that program, because I know it had gone on to a large extent, questionnaires had been given, we had filled a lot of things, because you may have the best talents if you don't have the right coach.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, don't coaches too need to be motivated?
Oh yes, definitely. You know, and another thing we need to realize is a lot of sports, you find a coach that says, oh, I'm an athletics coach.
What does that mean? I only coach people doing athletics?
Athletics, yes, he's an athletic coach. But even in athletics, you can't just be an athletics coach. Are you a sprint coach? Or are you a long distance coach? There are specifications. It's like you can't, for example, say you're a youth coach and then say you should be the national coach. If you need to specialize in an area, and that's where you have a large contingent of officials, coaches, accompanying teams. If you look at the developed teams, because in an athletics, you have the sprint coach, you have the jump coach, you have the throws coach, you have the long distance coach, and so on and so forth. Even in wrestling or table tennis, you have coaches that have specific specialties. We have not gotten to that stage yet. And you know, coaching these days is scientific now. It's no longer run, jump. No. It's scientific now, and we need to expose our coaches to the latest scientific methods of coaching.
What about the state of our stadia across the country when you're busy using the National Stadium for religious conventions and everything but sports? You are, in other words, saying that sports is not that important here.
You have facilities in Nigeria that are locked up, and then you begin to wonder, so where do the athletes train? Or where should they train?
Why are they locked up?
That's our own mentality of maintenance. I find it ridiculous. Oh, there's a funny example that occurred some time ago. I won't say where. You know, a stadium manager was asked why he was always locking up the gym. There's some people came, they said they wanted to use the tracks for inter-house sports. He said no, and he didn't allow. So, you know, we intervened and said, why are you locking up this? He said, we don't want them to spoil it. That if they use it, the tartan track will get spoiled. And then you begin to wonder, so what is the tartan track meant for? Is it not meant to be used?
When does he want to use it?
Maybe for the National Sports Festival or something. You know, so there's really a lot to be done. And that was a stadium manager, for example.
And that brings me to the point you made earlier on about bringing people into the administration or who have nothing to offer sports.
Who don't understand what sports it's all about. And then, you know, because for him, he was preserving the place.
Whereas it should have been the opposite.
It should have been the opposite. Because if you don't use it, it deteriorates. A tartan track has a lifespan. So whether you use it or not,
you have to change it after a certain number of
Yes.
years.
And you don't need to have a stadium in every place. You don't need to have. You have mini sports centers, which should not be too expensive for us to have. At least one in every local government in this country. I don't think it's something that is far-fetched.
Yes.
That, if we are serious about sports development.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tandoh, for coming on the program. And as Nigeria begins to do a synopsis of our outing in Rio 2016, I will have you back on the program when the federal government takes a decision one way or the other.
It will be my pleasure. Thank you very much.
And that's it for this week. I'm Angela Ajitumobi. Thank you for watching.